So in connection with our 25th anniversary, Mazel Tov to us, and our taking of the new name, Gesher, the Bridge Shul, as you know, I've been centering my teachings this year on the theme of the bridge and its core functions of connecting and transitioning and supporting through difficult terrain. And now on Yom Kippur, I want to explore this image of the bridge in the context of repentance, forgiveness, reconciliation, and atonement. It's an apt metaphor. Wrongdoing of any kind creates a gap between one person and another, between ourselves and God, and within the self. And tshuva, the work of repentance, of return, which includes apology, remorse, restitution, is the work of bridge building, of attempting to reestablish connection. Forgiveness reaches out from the other side. So I want to go back to a story that I told you on Rosh Hashanah. It was on Sunday, the end of the teaching, and it was a story about the Hasidim who were in the presence of Rabbi Israel of Rishon, and he seemed like he was in a good mood, and so they asked him, "Tell us, Rebbe, how should we serve God?" And he was surprised, and he said, "How should I know?" And then he told them this story. There were two friends, and both were accused before the king of a crime. Since the king loved them, he wanted to show them mercy, but he couldn't acquit them because even the king's word can't prevail over a law. So the king gave this verdict. A rope was to be stretched across a deep chasm, and the two accused were to walk it, one after the other. And whoever reached the other side would be granted his life. And it was done as the king ordered, and the first of the friends got safely across, and the other was standing on the same spot and cried out, "Tell me, my friend, how did you manage to cross that terrible chasm?" And the first one called back, "I don't know anything except this. Whenever I felt myself toppling over to one side, I leaned to the other." That's the story. And last week, I focused mostly on the end, about the friends crossing and how one became a teacher for the other in crossing the narrow bridge that is life. But tonight, I really want to focus on the frame of the story. Two people, let's call them Adam and Eve, stand guilty of a crime, a capital offense. For the day you eat of the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, you will die. The king, out of love, wishes to forgive. The king's commitment to law makes forgiveness impossible. The story sits in the irresolvable dilemma of forgiveness. Technically, it's pardon. But for our purposes today, let's think about it as forgiveness. Forgiveness, which is necessary from the perspective of love and life. Neither one can continue without it, and seemingly impossible from the perspective of law, strict justice. This is our situation on Yom Kippur, and always. It's one of the central problems of the human condition in every relationship we have. I imagine that nearly all of us has been at one time or another on both sides of the question. As usual, the king in the story represents God, but that casting decision really just sharpens the question. Even God, who fully embodies both love and justice completely and perfectly, even God sits in the dilemma. Truly, it doesn't matter who's who. The king is God, the two people are humanity. Both the king and the accused are just ordinary people between whom offense has been made. The king and the accused are both stand-ins for the self, and the context is judging and trying to forgive one's own self. Most radically, we're the king, and it's God who stands accused. It doesn't matter. The dilemma of forgiveness remains in every case. To forgive is a failure of justice. Not to forgive is a failure of love. Now, I know I'm simplifying, and also there is no possible way that tonight I will be able to explore the full complexity of the mystery of forgiveness and tshuva, right? Whole books have been written about this question and the process whereby forgiveness comes to pass. From philosophical, religious, psychological, legal, historical perspectives, I am certainly not solving it tonight. I also realize that I framed it in a kind of philosophical tone. But this is not an intellectual problem. This is a gut level struggle. It's part of what holds us back when we want to forgive and we can't. It's part of what keeps us still wanting that apology, needing more, even when we say we've forgiven and we mean it. It's what keeps us up at night when we don't forgive, worrying that maybe we're not good people, not generous enough, not loving enough. And it's especially gut-wrenching when there's no possibility of actually working through the problems with the other, either because the person won't, or because they're gone, or because our struggle is with forgiving God or ourselves. Load the scale with as much justice as you want. What he did was unforgivable. They haven't earned forgiveness. They haven't even said they're sorry. The harm she caused is too great. Your decision will likely then be to forgive, will be not to forgive. And you'll be left living with the specter of the failure of love. Was I too harsh, mean-spirited? Especially if there's some kind of special relationship, a family member, a close friend, or you know there are extenuating circumstances, or vice versa. Step on the scale of love with all your heart and all your soul and all your might. It is so tempting. We need more love in the world, compassion, grace. And then you will likely forgive. And you may be haunted by the failure of justice. What about the people they hurt? How can I condone behavior like that? And I'm sure we're all familiar with some of the possible solutions, right? There's the practical, the sort of, it's called the consequentialist approach to forgiveness, right? I put aside the big principles and I do whatever enables us to go on. It's a biblical model. It's what Moses says to God after the golden calf. You know, you really have to forgive the people because if you don't, it's going to be bad PR. What are the nations going to say? They're going to say you couldn't really bring them into the land. God says, all right. Right? Nixon is pardoned so the country can move forward. A spouse is forgiven an affair so the marriage can continue because the partners love each other and they love their life together and they have kids. We forgive because holding on to the anger and resentment is causing harm to us because it's exhausting and we're just tired of it. And God forgives on Yom Kippur because otherwise Project Israel, Project Humanity will end. There's a midrash in the name of Rabbi Simon that when God wanted to create Adam, human beings, the angels started fighting about it. One group saying, yeah, you should create them, and the other group saying, definitely not, right? So Chesed, loving kindness, said you should create them because they'll do all kinds of good loving things. And truth said, don't do it. They're going to lie all the time. And righteousness, Tzedek said you should create them because they'll do all kinds of acts of righteousness. And peace, Shalom, said, do not do this. They're going to fight all the time. And what did God do? God took truth and threw it to the ground, right? We do what we have to do. Yeah, you're right. They're going to lie all the time. I want to create them. I'm doing it, right? Then there's also the concept of grace, of unearned mercy, which is basically sidestepping justice. It's a big part of our liturgy. Avinu Malkeinu, Chonenu, be gracious to us. We've earned nothing. We know that. Forgive us anyway, right? I know there are people who are so filled with love that they're genuinely able to forgive from that place. And if you've ever experienced it, I'm sure you felt as I have, so grateful to be the recipient of unmerited grace. It has happened to me, and just thinking about it, when I tell the story, it brings me to tears. Truly, the world would be horrible without grace, especially for small affronts, the sharp elbows of life. We could all do with a little bit more grace, cutting each other some slack. It's also true that Jewish tradition teaches us that we are not supposed to demand strict justice. A Jew is not supposed to stand on every last bit of our rights. Who is forgiven, the Talmud asks? Misha ma'avir al midatav, the person who forgoes a little bit of what they're entitled to and settles for something less, right? But for really big things. We had a very rich discussion on Slichot, about the book, The Sunflower, that Simon Wiesenthal wrote, about an experience he had toward the end of the Shoah of being pulled out of a work camp because a soldier dying in a hospital asked to speak to a Jew because he'd committed horrific atrocities and he wanted to die in peace. So he said, bring me a Jew, called the nurse. Can you bring a Jew in? And they brought Simon Wiesenthal, and he asked for forgiveness. The whole book is about, what do you do? What do you do? Neither the practical approach nor unmerited grace, important as they are, is fully satisfying. We care about truth. We care about justice. And well, we should. There's something undermining to human dignity and integrity and meaning, right? About just looking the other way and forgiving out of pure grace. And sometimes, if we're honest, there's a little aftertaste of power or condescension, right? Being the bigger person. It can be especially unsatisfying in forgiving ourselves when we're the accused, and also the king wanting so much out of love to acquit, but knowing that doing so in violation of our own sense of justice, of the truth of ourselves, will only add more guilt. Am I then, in the end, incapable of judging myself with integrity after all? Of holding myself accountable? It's necessary, and yet it doesn't really feel good. It's Merle's poem that I read earlier. I let myself off the hook every day. Every day. Now, as I said, there's no way I'm solving this problem tonight, but I do think that the way we've been thinking and talking of bridging offers help in managing the dilemma. It is, after all, the story's solution. Somehow, the accused's willingness to walk that narrow bridge and make it across breaks the logjam. It creates a third way. How exactly? It's a little puzzling. At the simplest level, the message of the story is that some balance of chesed, loving kindness, and deen, law and justice, is necessary. We know this, right? I mean, think about it. Like, why does Yom Kippur come after Rosh Hashanah? I mean, when you think that you'd have the day of forgiveness and atonement and repair the relationship and clean the slate, and then start the new year fresh, right? Wouldn't that make sense? No, can't be. Why? Because the Day of Atonement is entirely dependent on the Day of Judgment. You can't have meaningful forgiveness and reconciliation without a commitment to justice. Walking the tightrope is our demonstration that we understand that. It represents our tshuva, our acceptance of accountability and responsibility, our understanding that Yom Kippur does not atone unless we've done our tshuva first, we've done the work. It's our understanding that even God can't forgive a sin on behalf of someone else. Yom Kippur doesn't atone for sins that we committed against other people unless we've appeased those people. Why we have to apologize, ask forgiveness, etc. Love can't just override justice. They need to work in tandem. It's very important. I think we know this. Tomorrow, I want to look at some of the implications of it in depth. But there's more to this story. For later. For now, we're going to rise for Baruch Hu on page 207.